Okay, so it just came up. Okay, so Yaada say greetings. First of all, Yechimo, greetings, and Yaada say once again for joining in the class. So we have a lot of information to cover. First and foremost, let's show this image of the piece for the class tonight. So when you saw the, the flyer for the class and so forth, this is the flyer. So when we're talking about these, this image here is from the papyrus of Ani, and I want to make sure you can see that. Okay, so this image is from the papyrus of Ani, Urunu Pert Imiru, Book of Coming Forth by Day, and so forth. So when we talk about these 42, the HEMU-SENU, HEMU means 40 and SENU means 2. So the HEMU-SENU is the 42 Ntorotu, Ntorou divinities that are the 42 assessors of Ma'at that you find in the Usek Ma'ati, or the dual hall of Ma'at. And these are the 42 deities. And there are 42 invocations to these divinities. 42 invocations to these divinities. And this is the particular text that everybody talks about when they're talking about the 42 quote unquote laws of Ma'at or admonitions of Ma'at, negative confessions, declarations of innocence, enunciations of Ma'at, whatever term people use, this is what they're talking about. It is true that the whites and their offspring, from this list of 42 ritual invocations, they took 10 aspects of these ritual invocations, and this is where they get these, so-called 10 commandments for the fictional cartoon character Moses, who of course never existed of any form or of any race. So that's where they get that from. However, unlike those quote unquote 10 commandments, these are not a set of 42 commandments. It's talking about things that we should not engage in, but it's also specifically and first and foremost dealing with 42 ritual invocations of these 42 divinities that we would invoke throughout the course of our lives on a regular basis anyway. So when we made our transition, we would invoke these different divinities just like we did throughout the course of our lives, to align ourselves with them and show that we lived in harmony with them throughout the course of our lives. So every time we're talking about the 42 quote unquote laws of Ma'at, we're talking about 42 ritual invocations or prayers to these different 42 male and female deities. Now, first we want to talk about the nature of that kind of invocation, but then we need to first, before we get into each one, and we're going to do about 7 per week and so forth, but first we have to have this introduction to talk about the nature of the invocation, as well as the reason why there are 42. Plus, you have the 42 divinities in the Usek Ma'ati, the dual hall of Ma'at, and then the judge in the hall of Ma'at is Ausar, which makes it, 43 divinities. So, but first we have to talk about why is that number important? So, but first we want to talk about the ritual invocation. So, we're going to go to our book, Kokobo, first. And let me get to that. Okay, so this is one of our 31 books. In this particular book, we're showing that dissexuality, homosexuality was never accepted in ancient Kamit and Kamit. We have a number of articles that we compiled to comprise this book, In the first one, the divine prohibition against dissexuality, homosexuality, and ancient Kamit, we show that in the Runu Pertinent Ntorotu, within this context of the 42 enunciations of Ma'at, one of them, the 11th one, is a prohibition, a divine prohibition against dissexuality, homosexuality. And that's what we were talking about in the context of this article. But also in the context of the article, we talk about what the nature of these 42 divinities are with regard to ritual invocation. So let's go up to, and this link is in the chat room. Now, what we say here, and this is on page 2. So what we say is, in order to live in harmony and perpetuity after death in the ancestral realm, as well as during life in the physical realm, the Afro-Aikani African Black individual must ritually invoke the 42 Ntorotu, misnomer Ntorotu, the gods and goddesses who are judges of Ma'at, Ma'at, assessors of Ma'at, Ma'at, divine law, and so forth. And of course, the male and female divinity, male divinity Ma'al, female divinity Ma'at. And of course, we just did a 6-part course on the male deity Ma'al, and he is the counterpart of Ma'at. We just did a 6-part course on that. But in order to harmonize with the energy of the Ntorotu, the divinities, the spirit forces in creation, the embodiments of divine order in creation, their energy is invoked. Once the energy is invoked or called, it can be internalized, infused, and replenished within the individual. And we say, like a drop of water fusing with the river, harmonizing with this greater force body of water in nature, so does the Afro-Aikani individual fuse his or her energy with the spirit force in nature. So what we do is we go to these divinities. So for example, if you go to the shrine of, or you go to the house of someone who is in the Akan tradition, Hoodoo tradition in North America, the Yoruba tradition, which is Juju in North America, or the Voodoo tradition, which is the Eve tradition in North America, and so forth. Go to someone's home, and they have shrines in their home to the divinities, to different divinities, Abosom, Marisha, Vodou, and so forth. You come into someone's house, you remove your shoes, depending on the home and so forth. You greet the person, but before you engage in activities, whether you came to sit down and talk or, you know, just do whatever you're doing, watching, you know, a film or whatever it is, before you do that, first you would go salute the shrine of their Nanano Nsamanfo, their spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors. And if they have shrines of the Abosom or the Orisha, the Vodou in their home, you would go before each shrine. If there's a shrine of Awusi or a shrine of Abatala, Dangbe, and so forth, you go before that shrine and salute. There's a shrine of Eshu, Legba, and so forth, you would salute that shrine. If there's a shrine of Oshun, you'll go to that. If they have more than one shrine in the home, you go from each shrine to salute each divinity. After you do that, then you will go and sit down and talk and, you know, engage in the regular activities that you would normally do. When we get up in the morning and take a shower and so forth and cleanse ourselves, first thing we do is salute the shrines of the Nanano Nsamanfo and the Abosom. Then we go about our regular activities with regard to the day. And then when we have ritual, specific ritual and so forth, whether it's ancestral ritual, ritual for the Nsamanfo, or we have ritual for the Abosom and so forth, we have certain ritual holidays or sacred observances and so forth, and you purify the area, then you go before each shrine of the Abosom, invoke these divinities, align yourself with them and so forth. We do this on a regular basis. So of course, when you make transition, you would do the same thing. You invoke the same Abosom, the divinities that you invoke throughout the course of your life to align you with order on a regular basis, on a daily basis. You do the same thing after transition to align with these divinities. And we talked about fusing with the divinity through ritual invocation. So in the process of accepting, receiving the infusion of energy through ritual invocation, so you invoke the divinity by name that provokes their energy, and they release that and dispense it, and you align yourself with their energy and you fuse with them. That's an acceptance or receiving of that infusion of energy. But we say, however, in the process of accepting, receiving the infusion of energy, divinely ordered energy from the Ntorou, Ntorotu, the Orisha, the Abosom, the Vodou, and so forth, the individual must reject perversity, disordered energy, which can manifest as a result of disordered thoughts, intentions, and or actions. So you receive the energy, the ordered dispensation of energy from these specific abosom, but at the same time, you must reject disordered thoughts, intentions, and actions that would otherwise disrupt that dispensation, that transmission to you and your capacity to receive it. So you receive that ordered energy, but you reject disordered thoughts, intentions, and actions. Reject perversity, disordered energy, and so forth. So we say the individual thus invokes, accepts the energy of the Ntorou, Ntorotu, spirits of divine order, and rejects, repels disorder. In this particular passage, we talk about, what was going on in that particular passage and so forth. But so what we're saying is you invoke the divinity by name. When you invoke that divinity by name, you send your energy, you project your energy to that divinity through ritual invocation. Your projection provokes them, no different than a child, crying for its mother and so forth. And when a child pulls on the breast, that's a ritual provocation. And then there's a release of milk to nourish the child and so forth. When you speak or engage in ritual incantation, ritual song, ritual chant, ritual prayer, and so forth, those sound vibrations connected to your ba, your divine living energy, your spirit is projected, provokes the energy of the abosom, and then there's a release of energy, and you receive that. But these 42 divinities govern different aspects of creation, and the aspects of creation they govern, you're not going to fully receive their dispensation of energy unless you can show that you have lived in harmony with the aspect of creation they govern, and you haven't created disorder within that aspect of creation. So you receive the energy by ritual invocation, that's the first half, and then you reject disorder, that's the second half. So in this particular text, it says, Hail Kererti, coming forth from the land of the west. A Kererti, Per Im Amintet. A, meaning hail, invocation of Kererti, the divinity Kererti, he who Per Im Amintet, he who comes forth from Amintet, the land of the west, the land of the setting sun, the spirit realm, and so forth. That's the ritual invocation. And as soon as you say Ah Kererti, Per Im Amintet, you just invoke the divinity. You sent those sound vibrations out to draw that, provoke the energy of the divinity to infuse his energy to you. Then you say An Nek Nek. It says An Nek Nek. The term neck, as you can see, first the term An is the two hands and they're saying negative no, An, and then Nek. And then you see it's the erect phallus here, so Nuk means to copulate. So Nuk, Nuk, meaning I have not, on or not, copulated, Nuk, Nuk. I have not copulated with a copulator. I have not engaged in copulation with a copulator or penetrated a penetrator. I have not engaged in same quote unquote sex or dissexuality. The one who is Kererti, who you're invoking to align with, the aspect of creation, Kererti, Keret means the caverns, the sacred caverns, the gateway to the inner realms and so forth. But then that also is the cavern, Kerer, the gateway to the inner realm of the body that includes the vagina of the female and so forth. So he has not violated the aspect of creation that the god Kererti governs. He has not entered into a cavern, Kerer, that he shouldn't be entering into. He's not engaged in disorder. He's only engaged in divine order. So he invokes the divinity, kereti, to be infused with that energy, and also shows that he is not engaged in thoughts, intentions, and actions that would place him out of alignment with the divinity and the aspect of creation that the divinity governs. That is true for this, and we use that one, of course, because we were talking about dissexuality and proving that there's a divine prohibition against dissexuality right in the text of Kamit. So when people try to say that we accepted homosexuality and so forth, dissexuality, of course, we did not. And of course, we use the term dissexuality because it's more proper and fitting as a term, dis meaning not, like disorder, meaning order is not present. Dissexuality meaning sexuality, dissexuality, sexuality is not present. If you're not Afurakani man and Afurakani woman together in balance, then sexuality is not occurring unless that's occurring. Whether it's male to male, female to female, that is not sexuality, that is dissexuality. Whether it's an Afurakani man or Afurakani woman trying to copulate with, someone who is non-Afurakani, that is dissexuality as well. Same thing with child molestation. Any form of sexual deviance is dissexuality. So, but we use that example, of course, in this text, but the same is true for all 42 divinities that govern, these different aspects of creation. So now, before we get into each one of them one by one, we need to understand who they are and why there's a set of 42 and how they govern creation. So first, we're going to go to this. And of course, if you have any issues with the sound, please just let me know. And let me make sure you can. Okay. So in ancient Kamit, the country is divided up into 42 administrative divisions, 42 districts akin to 42 states with a capital, similar to there are 50 states in the United States. And then of course, each state has its own capital, but then the country itself as a whole also has the capital, which is Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia, which is a capital for the nation. It's not a capital of any specific state, but it's its own separate district. That's why it's not called a, state and so forth. The framers did not want to have one city that was the capital of a state also being the capital of the entire country as well, because that wouldn't be harmonious, so to speak. So each state has a capital, but then the country itself has a capital, that is Washington, D.C. In the same fashion, originally you have ancient Kamit and Kamit. You have 42 administrative divisions. The whites in our spring call them Nomes. We call them Sepat. The Sepat, 42 sepatu and so forth. And of course, there's a capital in ancient Kamit. Now, it's important regarding what is the nature of these 42 Nomes and why there are 42 plus the capital, making that 43rd division. What is the nature of that? If you look at the term Sep for Sepat, Nome, country, the divine Nomes and so forth, these are the different districts. When you look up Nomes of Kamit, and as a matter of fact, let's just look at that really quickly. So you see here, Nome in Egypt and so forth, a district, nomos in Greek means district. And you'll see Upper Kamit and Lower Kamit. In Lower Kamit, there are 20 sepatu, that's in the north. Upper Kamit, 22 sepatu. And here is a list of all of them. You see the standard, the Nome standard, the name of the sepat, Anebu-Hetch, for example, in Lower Kamit, the first Nome in Lower Kamit, Anebu-Hetch, which is Min-Nefer, the sacred sanctuary of Ptah, one of the most enduring capitals in Kamit for centuries and so forth. Then the second Nome, Kapesh, and the third Nome, Amentet, and so forth. And fourth Nome, Ntorotu. So, and then the capital of each Nome. So just like we have a sepat, a district, so-called Nome, or state, and then a capital, you have Kapesh, then the capital is Kem. You have Amentet, and the capital is Amu. You have Anebu-Hetch, and the capital is Aneb-Hejetet, or Hejet, and so forth, and Nefer. So, the same fashion. That's Lower Kemet. Then in Upper Kemet, you have the same fashion. You have the standard, the ritual symbolism, the divinity that governs the sepat and so forth, the name of the sepat, so-called Nome, and the capital, so forth. For example, you have Ta-Seti, which is the first Nome of Kemet. That is in southern Kemet, at the border between Kemet and Kanido, the border between, Egypt and Nubia. And the Nome itself, or the sepat itself, is called Ta-Seti, the land of the bow and so forth. And then the capital is Abu, and the term Abu means elephants. This is why they call it Elephantine in English and so forth. The modern capital is Swene or Aswan, land of the bow and so forth. So, and you have, the Nomes or the sepatu in southern Kemet, sepatu in northern Kemet with their capitals. In total, 42, just like the 42 Assessors of Maat. Then we had the judge in the hall, which was Ausar, the 43rd divinity. The capital of the country is the 43rd sanctuary. So you have the 42 plus the capital, or the 43 divinities plus the judge. So where does that come from? Why are they arranged in that fashion? Well, if you look in, as we always talk about, if you look at the nature of the divinities, they also have shrines within our bodies. Sepat means district of Nome and so forth. It also is Sepat in Chet, which means the Sepat of eternity and so forth. That is the name of the necropolis, meaning the spirit realm. So there's Sepatu in the physical realm, as we show in Kamit, dividing up the country. Sepatu in the spirit realm. These are the sacred Nomes, or Sepatu in the spirit realm, and the spirit realm is divided up into these sacred Sepatu as well. But then you also have Sepatu in the physical body that regulate the entire physical body. What are the Sepatu in the entire physical body? And when you look at the term Sep, it can mean time or a season. We also already saw it means, district, administrative division, but time or season, a season is an administrative division of a cycle. An aspect of time is an administrative division of a cycle. It can also mean the case in court, a legal decision and so forth, a time of judgment. Septepi is the primeval time and so forth. It can also mean to supplicate. So what are we dealing with? The Sepatu are named after the deity whose name is Sepa. Sepa, as you can see here, the determinative symbol of Sepa is the centipede. He is the centipede divinity. Sepa also means to benefit, to thrive, to prosper, which is what these administrative divisions contribute to the whole. The centipede divinity, the chief of the 7 spirits who guarded Ausar. And we'll see in the Runu Pertnim Heru that he is a divinity that guards the body of Ausar, the 7 spirits that guard the body of this 7 spirits that guard the body, the mummified body of Ausar. Sepa is the head of them, or the chief of them. The centipede divinity. So you look at the centipede divinity. His name is Sepa. This is his animal totem, the centipede. And when you look inside the body, then you will find the centipede in the body. You'll find Sepa in the body. We have 43 pairs of nerves that make up the peripheral nervous system, and they regulate all aspects of the body, all aspects of the nation, of the whole. The centipede in the body regulates the entire body, and he has 43 pairs of appendages. So this is the centipede here. He's inside the body, 42 Nomes and so forth. This is a satellite depiction of Kamit. Of course, we have the south at the top and the north at the bottom and so forth, because that is the orientation, the proper orientation of the map, as shown in ancient Kamit and Kamit. So this is why there are 42 divisions plus the capital making 43, 42 assessors of Maat plus the judge, which makes 43 and so forth, because there are 43 pairs of nerves that regulate the entire body. And we have the same division that is replicated when we structure our nation. Now, first we'll look at these 43 sets of nerves, and then we want to get into the cosmology that's associated with Sepa, and then we'll start talking about these deities. And of course, if you have a question in the chat room, yes, that's circumception, cycle, circadian rhythms, right. So in the chat room, if you have a question, you can post it in the chat room, question or comment. Okay, now. Okay, so this is the important piece. These 43 sets of nerves. And they govern the peripheral nervous system. So the peripheral nervous system, the nerves that you see and so forth, the central nervous system is the brain and the spinal column. The peripheral nervous system are the pairs of nerves that are extending from the central nervous system, the CNS. So now we're not going to go through every piece here, but and they're just going through, specific details. But you have, so you have the 12 cranial nerves, and well, let's go back up. 12 cranial nerves, and then you have the 31. So the 12 cranial nerves in the head and, into the neck region, and the thoracic area, lumbar, and all of that, you have the other 31. But let's just get up to that point real quick, and then we're going to go through them. Okay, well, we'll just go. So you have 12 in the head region. That's the quote unquote heavenly region. The neck is the gateway, and then the body is the earthly region. And then you have 31 pairs of nerves from the neck down. So the cranial nerves are in the head region. So the nerves attached to the brain are the cranial nerves, which are primarily responsible for the sensory and motor functions of the head and neck. One of these nerves targets organs in the thoracic and abdominal cavities as part of the parasympathetic nervous system. There are 12 cranial nerves, which are designated in the literature CN1 through CN12 for cranial nerve using Roman numerals 1 through 12. They can be classified as sensory nerves, motor nerves, or a combination of both. And it's important because, you know, when you look at these different divinities, they are associated with these different pairs of nerves. These 42 divinities connect to these 42 pairs of nerves plus the, you know, the judge and so forth. So sensory nerves, motor nerves, or a combination of both. And so going through them, first we're going to look at those 12. The olfactory nerve and optic nerve are responsible for the sense of smell and vision, respectively. Oculomotor nerve is responsible for eye movements and by controlling 4 of the extraocular muscles. It is also responsible for lifting the upper eyelid when the eyes point up. For the pupillary constriction, trochlear nerve and the abducens nerve are both responsible for eye movement. So if you look at all the sets, you see these are the 12 nerves in the cranium. Now, and then they have a chart, and of course you can get this information on any anatomy piece, but here's the key piece, because when we look at the nature of the different divinities, you'll see that there's a relationship. So the first set, the olfactory, deals with smell, olfactory bulb and so forth. The optic nerve pair deals with vision, hypothalamus, thalamus, midbrain. Oculomotor, the eye movements. Trochlear, eye movements, trochlear nucleus. Trigeminal, the sensory motor face, the movements of the face and so forth, connected to the midbrain and the pons and medulla. Abducens, the eye movements, once again, the facial, motor, face, taste. And auditory, hearing, balance. Glossopharyngeal, the motor, throat, taste. Then you have the vagus nerve or the vagus nerve, the motor sensory viscera goes all the way through the body into the abdomen and so forth. The spinal accessory, the motor head and neck, and the hypoglossal, the motor lower throat. So you have these, you know, nerves within the cranium. Then you have the spinal nerves, which are the other 31 spinal nerves, named for the level of the spinal cord at which each one emerges. There are 8 pairs of cervical nerves, designated C1 to C8. That's in the cervical vertebrae and so forth. We dealt with that in the Ankh portion of the term yoga book and so forth. The thoracic nerves, T1 to T12, 5 pairs of lumbar nerves, L1 to L5, 5 pairs of sacral nerves, S1 to S5, and 1 pair of coccygeal nerves, the coccyx bone and so forth. So the spinal nerves extend outward from the vertebral column to innervate the periphery. The nerves in the periphery are not straight continuations of the spinal nerves, but rather the reorganization of the axons in those nerves to follow different courses. So they go through each one. There's another chart, and you can see the various nerves here along the spinal or emerging from the spinal column and so forth. And on this one, they don't have that long list of the all 31, but you can see, so those are the 31 below. Now, but first let's talk about the divinity Sepa, his role in the body. This is why he governs the sepatu. That's why the nomes or districts are named after him. He's the centipede divinity with the 43 pairs of, you know, appendages and so forth, governing the 43 pairs of nerves in the body. Now let's look at spiritually who Sepa is. And once we know who he is, this is why we have 43, 42 plus the capital, you know, same in the Akan tradition. We have a 42-day sacred cycle, which makes up the Akan calendar. Every 42 days is an ancestral celebration. So it's 42 days plus the ancestral celebration makes 43, but that 43rd day is also the beginning of the next cycle, which is the first day. So the first day is also the 43rd day. So every 42 days and so forth, on that 43rd day, we have that ancestral ritual, the Akwesiadai or Awusiadai and so forth. And in the mid period of that, we also have the Awuku Adai, the Wednesday Adai and so forth. Akwesi Adai is the Sunday Adai. Adai means a ritual, a resting period, but a ritual period as well. So every 42 days, every one of those days is governed by Abosom and so forth, just like, and that regulates the entire Akan calendar throughout the course of our lives. Just like these 42 divinities plus the chief and so forth regulates our lives every single day and even in transition. So we're going to go to the Runu Perdim Heru, so-called Book of the Dead and so forth, to get that information about the divinity Sepa. And it's important to know who this divinity is, because simply reading the 42 Laws of Maat in English and saying, you know, as though they're just 42 commandments, that's not what the text is written for. It's not just to rattle off 42 laws saying, I have not done this, and I have not done that, and I have not done this. That's not what the text is about. It's never been about that. These texts in ancient Kamit are ritual invocations. They were written down for posterity, but the people already knew the ritual prayers. It's no different than if you went to a hoodoo ritual or a juju ritual in North America, or if you went to an Akan ritual or, you know, a Yoruba ritual on the continent of Africa. They don't have, you know, the ritual songs written down. The children, from the time they're young into adulthood, they learn the songs, they learn to sing them, they learn the ritual prayers and so forth. Everybody knows that. They know when the Orisha possesses and who it is. They know who the Abosom is when they possess and so forth. We're used to doing that. So it was no different in ancient Canadian Kamit. These things were written down for posterity, for us, you know, to preserve the culture, you know, over thousands of years. But the people living there at the time, they knew who these divinities were. They had shrines in their homes. They went to shrines, you know, in the community and so forth. They engaged in libation and ritual song, ritual dance, ritual prayer, ritual chant, you know, all different forms of gateways to the ancestral realm. They knew who these divinities were, and they were constantly engaging them on a regular basis. So they weren't going home just reading 42 laws. They were invoking Kererti. They were invoking Usek. They were invoking Fat. They were invoking Herefhaf. They were invoking every one of these divinities on a regular basis that was part of everyday life. Just like people invoke different Orisha, Bosom, Bodu, and so forth is part of everyday life. So it's not about just reading some laws and saying, I haven't done this. That's not what it's about. These texts are ritual invocations. So let's look at this particular text dealing with the divinity Sepa, to see where his cosmology arises from, his role in cosmology arises from. It's from chapter 17 of the Runu Perdim Heru, which is one of the longest chapters in the entire text. So we're not going to go through the whole text, of course. We just need to touch on the region that deals specifically with him, so we can see why there are 42 Assessors of Maat and what their role is as a collective. And then once we understand their role as a collective, then we can deal with each one. So the text is a call and response kind of text, just like we have in ritual, where this hoodoo in North America or on the continent, call and response. So they'll make a statement, then a question to be asked is, what then is it? And then they'll respond to the statement. So it's a call and response throughout the text that gives further definition. a statement is made, question is asked, what does this mean? And they give further definition. So we can just start here. Amoste Hapi Dwamutef Keb Senewep. These are the 4 sons of Heru. It says, homage to you, masters of Ma'at, right and truth, and so forth, divine beings who are behind Ausar, causing to be annihilated defects, who are in the following of the female divinity Hetep Sekus. Grant you that I may come to you, destroy the defects all which belong to me, according to that which you wrought for the 7 beatified beings, the 7 Aku, these who are among the followers of their master Sepa, made Anpu their place on that day of come, therefore there. Then the text says, what then is it? Or what does that mean? So they talked about, he's asking the divinities to destroy the defects within him, the disorder within him. You know, when just like physically, if someone is buried, and if there was some, you know, parasites, maggots trying to come and attack the body, you want to remove that out the way and so forth. One of the reasons we mummified the body and purified it so there wouldn't be decay. In the same fashion, someone transitions, their spirit separates from the body. There are maggot type or parasitical type discarnate spirits who would seek to control the individual, viral type spirits and so forth who didn't live in harmony with order. Just like if you go outside and there's some people who are criminals and so forth trying to come and attack you, or somebody who's trying to lure you into some criminal behavior, you want to repel such individuals in life. You want to repel such discarnate spirits when you make your transition. This person lived in a harmonious, purified lifestyle, so they're invoking the divinities to assist in the repulsion of these negative entities that will create defects within their spirit body. Destroy for me the defects that would otherwise, you know, encumber my development. Do the same destruction and purification and protection for me that you wrought for the 7 Aku, the 7 beatified beings, or the illuminated beings, spirits, those who are among the followers of their master Sepa. Sepa is the chief of 7 Aku, illuminated spirits. So just like you protected them, please protect me the same way. Anpu placed, you know, those 7 spirits under the dominion or guidance or, you know, jurisdiction of the divinity Sepa. After Anpu, who is the jackal-headed divinity, mummifies the body of Ausar, then he placed Sepa as the chief, and he has 7 assistants. And Sepa, the centipede divinity, is the chief of that mummified body. And there are 7 spirits that protect that mummified body. Anpu, after he mummifies the body, he said, okay, Sepa, I'm finished mummifying. Now you, Sepa, the centipede divinity, you protect. Centipedes, by the way, they attack, they have venom, they just attack and destroy other insects that, you know, will cause issues, and they help with the fertility of the soil and so forth in that process. So in the same fashion, when the body is buried and so forth, and Sepa is protecting and with the fertility of the soil and destroying insects through its venom and so forth, it's a protective power. When that body is in the ground, the great Sepa centipede divinity that's helping with the fertility of earth and so forth by destroying certain animals, other insects and so forth, doing the same thing for your physical body and your spirit body. So Sepa, after Anpu mummifies, Anpu moves ahead, leaves Sepa in charge, and Sepa has 7 assistants that protects the spirit body. They say, what then is it? So what are you saying here? It says, these masters of right and truth is Tahuti and Asdes, the master of Amentet. The divine beings behind Ausar are Amoste, Hapi, Dwamutef, and Kep Senewef, the 4 sons of Heru. Are those who are behind the thigh in the northern heaven. So when you look up in the sky and you see um, Sa, or so-called Orion, Ausar's pavilion in the sky. Then you see what they call the shield of Orion is actually the 4 sons of Heru and so forth. They're talking about the northern half. Then it says, now those who cause annihilation of the esfet, or the disorder, the defects, and are in the following of Hetep Sekus, as just mentioned earlier. Sebek is within the waters. Now Hetep Sekus, the female divinity, is the eye of Ra. Otherwise said, the flame it is following Ausar to burn up the spirits of his enemies. Hetep Sekus, a female divinity, is the eye of Ra. She is also the flame, the divine flame, spiritual force that has this divine flame power in the following of Ausar to burn up the spirits of his enemies. So it is part of the divine order to destroy and burn up and kill the enemy. That's decreed in the text and so forth, in many cases. So it says, now as concerning the defects that it was mentioned earlier in the text, all which belong to Ausar, the scribe of the divine offerings of the divinities Ani, since he went forth from the womb of his mother. Now, as concerning the Aku, the beatified beings or the illuminated spirits, 7. Amoste, Hapi, Dwamutef, Ket Senwef, Ma'a Atef F, Keti Bekef, Heru Kinti Ma'a. Placed then on Pu as protectors of the mummified body, the Karas of Ausar. As we said, on Pu is the, and in fact, let's just show that real quick so you can see what we're talking about. So you can see a visual of this. Okay, we had that. Let me see. Get back to that picture. Oh. Okay, so that is that. Let me make sure you can see that right quick. Okay, so this is Anpu. This is no Anubis, but Anpu, he's the Ut, in terms of Ut's mummification. He's the Ut, the great Ut, the mummifier of the body of Ausar. After he mummifies the body of Ausar, and of course we know that mummification is the process of turning the physical body using the hardening medicines we call in Akan, a Chin-Chain, Nduru, the hardening medicine and so forth, but to turn the body itself, to crystallize the body. Even the term keres, as we just saw in the text, the mummify, or the quote unquote dead body of Ausar, the keres, that's not the origin of the term Christ. Keres is actually the origin of the term crust, as well as crystal or crystallize. So keres is the one that hardens, the body is hardened and so forth, mummified. It turns the body into a crystal. And that crystal is the greatest magnetizing force for the spirit of the individual who used to take up residence in that body. So when you take the physical body, you take it through a ritual process and you crystallize it. It's like you use crystals as, talismans, as magnifying forces and magnetizing forces for the Abosom and the Nsamanfo, the deities and ancestral spirits. When you crystallize the body and make the body itself a huge crystal, it is the most powerful ancestral shrine. We can set up ancestral shrines, but there's no more powerful ancestral shrine than the actual body that the ancestor or ancestress used to reside within their entire lives. So we crystallize that body, make it into a crystal, literally a keres. And then that spirit is drawn during ancestral ritual, ancestral quote unquote holidays and so forth. That's what we're doing. So Anpu mummifies the body, crystallizes the body. Once he does that, then he leaves Sepa, the centipede divinity, who regulates the entire set of districts. He governs the entire body, and he has 7 assistants, the 7 Aku, the 7 illuminated beings, and they list their names in the text. Place them Anpu as protectors of the Kares, the crusted or encrusted body, or the crystallized or crystallized body of Ausar. Then it says, otherwise said behind the place of purification of Ausar, otherwise said the Aku 7, those are Nechet, Aked Ked, An Erta Nef Besef, Kinti Heth, then Akhed Ami Unutef, Desher Ma'a Ami Het Anes, Ubes Hera Per Im Ket Ket, Ma'a Im Ker An Nef Heru. 7 titles of these 7 divinities. These are 7 divinities that are protective of the mummified body of Ausar. These 7 divinities who are protective of these regions. These 7 regions are shrines. Of course, this has to do with the Karu, the term in ancient Ghanaian Kamit, where they get Kakra from. It comes from Kara in ancient Kamit. Kakra becomes chakra and so forth in the 7 chakras. The 7 spirits that govern the purified, crystallized body of Ausar are the same 7 spirits that govern the purified body, the spirit body, the Sahu of the Afro-Akani man and Afro-Akani woman, which we talk about in our Ankh Kara, origin of the term yoga, and origin of the nature of the chakra class on Monday nights. Now, then it goes into talking about okay, so then it goes into talking about the chief of the beings in the great hall is Heru, the avenger of his father, and the day of come then there, as I mentioned earlier, is the saying of Ausar to Ra, when Ausar and Ra come together to work together and so forth. So they start talking about the rest of that piece. But the key here is the serpent or the centipede divinity is the one, that regulates the body and has 7 assistants. And those are the 7 Karakaru, spirits that govern the 7 Karakaru, so-called chakras and so forth. But this is why you have 42 assessors. Now, let's look at who these 42 assessors are. Okay, so now when you get to the text, let me make sure it's, see it. Okay, so again, we had to go through that. Most people have never talked about Sepa. Sepa is important because Sepa is the name, not only the divinity that regulates the entire body through the peripheral nervous system, but because it's 43 pairs of nerves, this is why Sepa lends his name to the 42 Sepatu, as well as the capital, making 43, regulating the entire nation. And also, as we saw, Sepat, regulating the quote unquote necropolis or the spirit realm as well. And because there are 43 divisions, this is why you have 42 divinities that regulate the entire nation or body and so forth, plus the chief or the judge. Then you can get into these 42. Now, and since, these, if you notice, of course, we're not making up any text. These 42 divinities plus the chief have always been in the text. You saw an image of all 42 of them sitting there, plus Ausar as the judge. They've always been there the entire time. So people talking about they're reading these texts, but they don't know if they've never brought this up and they're promoting themselves as experts in the culture, or allowing people to promote them as experts in the culture, or elders or eldresses, or high priests and high priestesses. And this most essential, basic information they have never brought forward, then that shows the reality that they're misinforming individuals. It's one thing to not know something, it's another thing to misinform people. So, out of negligence. So, now let's get into okay, so when you're getting to the hall of Ma'ati, it says, Hail Ntorou, the great God, the great Ntorou, Neb Ma'ati, the master of Ma'ati. I've come to you, my Neb. I've brought myself that I may see your Neferu, your excellence. I know you. I know the name. I know the names of the Ntorou, Ntorotu, 42, the HEMU-SENU, or the 42 divinities who exist with you in the Usek Ma'ati, or the hall of Ma'ati. So he's invoking the great divinity, talking about Ausar in this context. And he says, I know you, and I know the names of the 42 divinities who exist with you in the hall of Ma'ati, who live as punishers of sinners, who live upon their blood on that day of computing dispositions before Neferu, which is the title of Ausar. Verify, not have I done wickedness in the place of Ma'at. Not have I known evil, not have I acted wickedly, not have I done each day and every works above what I should do, not has come forth my name to the boat of the prince. Not have I despised the divinity, not have I caused misery, not have I caused affliction, not have I done what is abominable to the divinity, not have I caused harm to be done to the servant by his chief. And they talk about a number of things that they, the individual has not done. Now let's get into the, hold on one second. We don't have to go through that portion in detail. Let me get back. So, but before we get to that part, okay, that's what it was. So when it says the 42 divinities, these are assessors of Maat who exist with you. This is Ausar, he's the 43rd, he's the judge. The 42 divinities, they exist with you in the hall of Ma'ati, the dual hall of Ma'at. Remember, we talked about the dual hall of Ma'at, the two ear canals leading to the vestibular system in both ears and so forth, the balancing center. So the two ear canals are the two halls that lead to the vestibular system. That's the dual hall of Ma'at and so forth within the body. The balancing center, Ma'at, of course, dealing with balance, but the dual hall of Ma'at, these 42 divinities who exist with Ausar in the dual hall of Ma'at, who live as the punishers of sinners, who live upon their blood on the day that of computing dispositions before Neferu. So the deities who assess divine law and order and balance are also the punishers of sinners. They're not the forgivers of sinners. And they're also the ones who live upon their blood, meaning they're the divine killers. Divine hate is rooted in divine order. It's the contractive pole of divine order, once again. So let's go forward. This is on page 98, 198. So then it goes back to in the hall of, dual hall of Ma'ati, because I know the name of these divinities who are in it, the followers of the Ntorou, which is the great God. And then we get into the 42. So look at the structure of each one, as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth. and we start getting into them. So the structure is the invocation, okay. Okay, so the structure is the invocation, which means quote unquote hail, it's, invoking the individual. And then the name of the divinity coming forth from a sacred sanctuary. In this context, Anu, not have I done Isfet. So it says, hail strider coming forth from Anu, not have I done wrong. The term is Usek, that's the title of the divinity. Usek is the one who comes forth from Anu. And Anu is the sacred sanctuary of Ra and Ra'et, as well as Atem and Asasi Nebetepet in Anu, which the whites and offspring call Heliopolis. It's near Cairo now and so forth. So Usek is the divinity coming forth from Anu, not have I done wrong. And just so you can see, this is the translation of the text, but quickly, just so we can get back to that. Okay, so that particular if you could see it here, the text that we just read in the book, here's the man's arm up saying Ah, and then this is Usek coming forth from Anu. This is the deity sitting here, Usek, that says, not have I done wrong. It's a little bit blurry on this piece, but we can pull up another papyrus for that. But it's showing the deity sitting here, the invocation of the divinity here, the divinity himself, and then, not have I done wrong. We talked about the invocation, which is the acceptance, infusing the energy and aligning itself with the energy of the divinity. When that spirit fuses with you like spirit possession, just like a spirit possesses somebody, communicates with somebody, gets inside their body and walks around and so forth through spirit possession. But that energy also searches throughout your spirit body to see if there's some disorder within. And you say, well, I have not engaged in the disorder, the kind of activities that will violate your domain of creation that you govern. I have not engaged in that. So I can receive your energy fully because I have not engaged in any thoughts, intentions, and actions that would create disorder in the realm or the aspect of creation that you govern. So you accept the divinity's energy and you repel the disorder that would otherwise create, conflict with the divinity whose energy you just accepted. It's acceptance and rejection. It's no different than eating food, taking in the nutrients, that's consumption, and then elimination, eliminating the waste to purge that from the body. You get the nutrients you need and purge out the rest. Expansion and contraction. Each one of these invocations is the same way. So you have the invocation on the top, the divinity in the middle, the statement of rejection at the bottom. And it's divine law, love, and divine hate. Divine law or love is the acceptance of order. Divine hate is the rejection of disorder and its pervades. Through your immunolymphatic system, you would reject disorder to preserve the integrity of divine order. Your immunolymphatic systems would reject viral agents and toxins and so forth so that your body can be preserved. They can preserve the integrity of this order. So you're constantly accepting order and rejecting disorder. Inhalation, exhalation, consumption, elimination, and so forth. That's the expansion and contraction of divine order. Now, okay, before we go forward, I had a couple of statements in the the chat room. Yes, so said Ma'ati in the Akan word for listen, and Ma'ati is I can hear you, and the name of Ma'ati is the Akan word for I listen. Okay, right. So if someone says Mate, if someone says Wote Asiye, and you say Mate Masiye, so right, it's receiving. So Ma'a also means to give and so forth. But when you say Mate Masiye, I have heard, and then I have received it or retained it and so forth. We have a book called Mate Masiye, that's one of the Adinkra symbols and so forth. So that Mate, the root Ma'a, yes, that goes back to that same root. And there was a question, is all of the Adinkra symbols not only proverbs, but representatives of the 42 deities as well? So you have a number of Adinkra symbols. Some of them are variations on one another, but there are hundreds of Adinkra symbols. So some of them, of course, are connected to the 42, but then there are more. Just like there are 42 deities, just like 42 sets of nerves that regulate order in the body. But then you have a number of different organs and glands also. But the nervous system, as a set of 43 pairs of nerves, regulate all of those organs and glands. And some will say they're like 70 plus organs and glands and so forth. Sometimes the definition of what is an organ and what is a gland is, shifts. But there are a number of different organs and glands, but the nervous system as a structure regulates the, functioning of all of them. It's an overarching regulatory body. And this is why Sepa is the centipede, the overarching regulatory body. You have these 42 divinities who are functionaries of Sepa, an overarching regulatory body. But then, of course, all the different organs and glands inside the body are shrines of these various many deities, within the body, shrines of those deities, just like on Earth. You have the magnetosphere, and there's a network of energy that's surrounding and permeating the Earth. But then you also have the oceans, rivers, streams, core, mantle, upper mantle, crust, atmosphere, mountains, fire, all those different aspects of the Earth itself are shrines for different divinities. But within that, they are within the, the magnetic field, the magnetosphere that has, streams of energy, a network of energy that's regulating everything that's happening on the body, and that's similar to the role of Sepa and so forth, in connection with Wachet and Nekabet. Okay, so we just wanted to show that when we're reading from the text, this is what's happening. It's an invocation of each one of these deities here. All right, so let's go back to that particular text. All right, so that first divinity, you just saw that seated divinity there. His name's Usek. So it said, Hail Usek, the divinity that was seated, coming forth from Anu, not have I done Isfet. Isfet means disorder. They'll say wrong, disorder, but disorder, quote unquote, sin. Sin is disorder, out of harmony with order, just in general, period. I have not done wrong. I have not engaged in Isfet, disordered energy. So the first, divinity is connected to the first nome of Kamit. So, and then let's look at the name of the divinity. Talking about the nome, first nome of Kamit. We have the different nomes here, but so the word Usek in general means to be wide or spacious. Wide, to be in a spacious place, to be spread out, empty, vacant. And then you also have a hall or any large chamber. We also have, so that first nome is actually, because we're talking about the south, then that's the head, whereas the north is the bottom, where the coccyx bone is and so forth. The south is where the cranium is. So when we talked about the cranial nerves and so forth, so this first, divinity, the place that's spacious and wide and so forth, but also a hall, but also, which is, in the cranium and so forth. But let's also look at this piece here. In fact, let's just look on the dictionary itself. Okay, so you can see Usek also is, it says wide and spacious, width and breadth. And then you'll see, it says Usek Nemat, a god of Anu, and one of the 42 assessors of Ausar. And this is the one we just looked at. You'll find that Usek here is also a title of Ra. And Usek Het is a female divinity. They'll say Uraeus goddess, but sacred copra goddess and so forth. And then some people are familiar with the Usek as the collar. Well, the broad, flat bottom boat, but the collar, pectoral, breasts, so you see the great collars. So let's look at an image of that, because that's important as well, to look at the nature of that divinity. And we have that shown in our book on a Yonkampon and a Yonkanton. So we're going to pull that up real quick. And just give me a second, I need to pull this up. Oh, no, that was wrong. Hold on one second. There's something going on with the, all right. Okay, so what we were showing in the Yonkampon and Yonkanton book is in relation to the Usek collar. there's a whole notion of the all-encompassing rule and power of the king, of the queen mother, the all-encompassing embrace of the Konton Kurowi, which is the circular rainbow and so forth. The circular rainbow is placed around the neck of the individual and so forth, but in our Khan, but you'll see the circular rainbow around the sun, circular rainbow around the moon. The king is the sun, the queen mother's moon, Ohiniye, Oria, Ohimaye, Osorane, and so forth. But this is the Usek collar, the pectoral, and so forth. And you see the divinities wearing the collar. That's, protector of the head and so forth that surrounds the head of the individual. And you see deities once again wearing the Usek. Oh, so Usek meaning to be wide and spacious, but also the collar, pectoral, breast ornament. This refers to the rainbow around the neck, representing the all-encompassing power of the sovereign, as well as the all-encompassing nature of death. So, and then we talk about when 10, the boat of Ra sets in the west, it goes into the underworld to the ancestral realm, and then you have the rising of the moon and so forth. So the all-encompassing power of the sovereign. So the first divinity that's invoked is Usek, or Usek Nemat, the all-encompassing power of the sovereign, to be wide, spacious, wide to be in a spacious place, to be spread out. So there's some divinity that has to do with that which is all-encompassing, spread out, wide, spacious, but the encompassing power of the sovereign. The Kra, the soul of the divine consciousness, is the divinity in the head region that regulates or is the sovereign of yourself. You need to align your thoughts, intentions, and actions with the divinity in the head region, which is the Okra, the Ka, the Kayat, soul divine consciousness, so that you can align every thought, intention, and action with divine order every moment of every day. So the first divinity that is invoked is the one that governs the Usek, wide, spacious, all-encompassing power of the sovereign energy, which is in the head. That's the first Nome of Kamit and so forth. And you have the first divinity, first of the 42. I invoke the divinity Usek, also called Usek Nemat. I have not done Isfet. If you do any form of Isfet, period, not specific, aspects of disorder, but just Isfet, period, then you're out of alignment with the Kra. So the first thing is I'm aligning with Usek, the divinity that governs the wide, spacious aspect of the, sovereign, the head. I have not engaged in this fact. That's the first piece. And then when we look back, so this first Nome of Kamit, the first of the 42 Assessors of Maat, the first declaration, the first alignment, the first ritual invocation, first alignment. And then when we look back to so you have the first, for example, the first 4 cranial nerves. You have one dealing with smell, one dealing with vision, one dealing with eye movements, and then the fourth one also dealing with eye movements as well. So let's look at those first 4. One dealing with vision, one dealing with smell, one dealing with oculomotor, eye movements, and then another one dealing with eye movements. And let's look at the difference between the eye movements, and then we're going to look at these next couple of deities. Okay, so olfactory nerve and optic nerve, responsible for the sense of smell and vision. Oculomotor nerve is responsible for eye movements by controlling 4 of the extraocular muscles. It is also responsible for lifting the upper eyelid when the eyes point up, and for pupillary constriction, so when your pupils become dilated. The trochlear nerve and the abducens nerve are both responsible for eye movement, but do so by controlling different extraocular muscles. So even if you look at the oculomotor nerve, responsible for eye movements by controlling the 4 of the extraocular muscles, is also responsible for lifting the upper eyelid when the eyes point up and for pupillary constriction. If you look at pupillary constriction, you see the circular, well, actually, let's just show an image of that. That constriction of the pupil. Of course, you know, you have these two, which are akin to the pupils in the eyes that contract and expand and so forth. So now, and this, of course, is the symbol, the circle with the dot in the middle. That's the sacred Medut, or symbol of Ra, as well as the suns and stars and so forth, and Ra'ed and so forth. But it also has to do with that Usek symbol. You have the Usek around the neck of Ra and Ra'ed, but you also have in the eyes, you have the same Usek symbol. You have that rainbow circular symbol around the quote unquote pupil. You have the rainbows around the pupil. Not only the pupil, the eye, the student, but you have the rainbow around the moon. You have the rainbow around the sun. Ohiniye Oria, the king is the sun. There's a rainbow around the sun. You have Ohemaye Osorane, the queen mother is the moon. You have a rainbow around the moon. But you also have the pupils of the eyes with the, you know, structure and so forth that expand and contract. But that's the Usek. The collar itself is the collar, the pectoral is the Usek, wide, spacious, expansive, and so forth. Also a title of Ra, and the Ura's divinity in this context, Ra. So that's one of them. Now let's look at the second one, and we'll get some even more, you know, greater information on that. Let me see. Now you get to the second divinity, Hail. Wait a minute. Hail, or Hepet Seshet, embraced with flame. That's the name of the divinity. Per Ker'aba, coming forth from Ker'aba. Not have I despoiled. And sometimes they're talking about despoiling the offerings. Sometimes people can, you know, you'll see people, you know, putting offerings aside and, you know, people taking the offerings, stealing the offerings, despoiling the offerings and so forth. They have not done that. Of course, that is, you know, a violation. That's a taboo. You don't, you know, put some offerings on a shrine for a divinity and someone comes to try to take the offering or use the offering and so forth. You create a great deal of disorder within yourself. So that's Hepet Seshet, coming forth from Keraba, I have not despoiled. Invocation of that divinity. But then you also have part 3, Hail Fantiu, or Fanti, sometimes it's Fanti, sometimes it's Fantiu, coming forth from Kemenu, not have I robbed. Now look at these two. You have Hepet Seshet is the second one, and Fantiu, which is coming forth from Kemenu. It says Fantiu, and it says the nose. And the symbol is the nose. You see the eye and the nose right here. Now that's very important for a couple of reasons. First of all, that is a title of Tahuti, as we show in our book on Sankofa. That is simple. One of the titles of Tahuti, and here it is. Fanti, he of the nose, and they show here the image of the nose itself, or sometimes the eye and the nose, that part of the face. One of the 42 judges in the hall of Ausar, name of Tahuti. Another version of that, Fandi or Fant, sometimes Fanti or Fant, which means, a form of Tahuti, one of the 42 assessors of Maat. Fant, meaning he of the nose. Of course, Tahuti has the great beak, the great nose, and so forth. He is of the nose. Fant, his title is Fant, and the N is nasal. So Fanti or Fant. And of course, Tahuti, the god of wisdom, is called Ifa in Yoruba, and Fa in Vodun, and Afa, the wisdom divinity in Igbo, and so forth. It comes from Fant, not Fenty, but Fant in ancient Kamit, Sanko Fa in Akan. We go into all that detail in this book. But he of the great nose. And the reason why it's the great nose, the important part is Fa means to grasp, as in Sanko Fa, but Fa also means to scrape or to scratch. That's important in Yoruba because Fa means to scrape or scratch in Yoruba, and they scratch the symbols in the Iyerosun, the divination powder, when doing divination. We were the ones to be able to bring forward why that scraping or scratching is associated with divinity, which they were unaware of. But it's because he's using his nose to scrape or scratch under the surface, to draw out what is under the surface, to bring it to the forefront so people can see. The god of wisdom using he of the nose, not only to smell, but to scrape, to scratch, to dig under the surface, to pull from the underworld, the spirit world, what we need to see in the physical realm. So when someone does divination for you, they're scraping or scratching under the surface to go into the spirit realm, to pull out what you need to see in the physical world, in your conscious mind state, so you can make the proper decisions. So that's Fant, he of the great nose or the great beak in reality, but Fant meaning the nose, the one that grasps and so forth. But when we go back, that's the reason why that's important, because he's the third divinity in that context. And of course, in the head of the individual, you have the optic nerve, oculomotor nerve that we just talked about, constricting the pupils and so forth. The olfactory nerve is the one that governs the sense of smell. And then you have the optic nerve. So those first three, you have, the oculomotor nerve dealing with Usek, the olfactory nerve dealing with Tahuti, he of the great nose, the one that governs the smell and so forth. And then when we look at the other piece, it is Hepet Sechet. Then we go and look at the definition of Hepet. And we go through, each one so we can have a better understanding of what's being talked about. But as you can see, it's directly related. These first three divinities are dealing with these parts of the cranial nerves. But we wouldn't have that understanding unless we knew that Sepa, the name of the centipede divinity, was directly related to 43 pairs of nerves, and that's related to the 42 districts of Kamit with the capital. If we didn't know who Sepat was, we wouldn't know why the name of the Nomes are sepatu, and we wouldn't know why there were 42, then we wouldn't even look to the 43 pairs of nerves and the olfactory and the oculomotor and the optic and so forth to see if they're related to the deities. So that's why knowing who Sepa is important with regard to this. Okay, just give me a second. Just gonna pull this up. This is the hieroglyphic dictionary. Of course, you can download the hieroglyphic dictionary for free on archive.org as well as pyramidtextonline.com. And this one takes a little time to load up.
Quasi, I got a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, my Yoruba teacher, she from Nigeria, and I'm paraphrasing her. She didn't say it in these exact words, but this is the way I took it. She said that voodoo, Hinduism, Kandobli, Santeria, the Greek, ancient Greek mythology. She said that it was all forms of the Yoruba tradition of that. And then also she know that I'm from America, and she kind of like said, like, she told me, you don't really have to study Kamit. Only thing you have to do is study the Yoruba tradition, and you're gonna learn math, science, and all the above. Something to that effect. What you say to her about saying that? And she also said that before the slave trade happened, that each part of West Africa was worshiping a different Orisha. That's why it's a mix up. We think that voodoo, we think that the Haitian tradition is not connected, and so forth. And South America and stuff like that. What would you say about that?
Well, a lot of some Yoruba people are like very Yoruba centric, just like you have some Igbo who are Igbo centric and say everything came from the Igbo and that's the real culture and that's where everything started. And you need to go and study the Igbo. You have some Yoruba people who say the same thing, like everything's, came from the Yoruba. She's saying you don't have to study Kamit because she doesn't really understand anything about Kamit, because typically when you hear people say, I'm studying Kamit, they're talking about the books that they've seen that people have published out here. People who haven't really made real connections to who the deities actually are. Outside of a few, popular ones like Oshun and Heru and stuff like that. As far like what we're talking about right now with Sepa and the 42 divinities and so forth, they haven't done that kind of work. So when people say, I'm studying Kamit, it's kind of a surface thing. So when people say, well, you don't need to study that, you just need to study Yoruba tradition. When you're studying about Kamit for real, you're talking about, Kamit and Kamit, Nubian Kamit and so forth. You're talking about the origin of these systems, and we just migrated out. So it's not studying. Yoruba is a unique expression of ancestral tradition based on where they are. Certain things in Yoruba culture wouldn't apply to our Khan people. If you got a divination, they talked about, sacrificing a goat for a certain reason and so forth. But then if you happen to be a Khan and Abireche is actually the goat, is actually your clan totem, for you to sacrifice that is like killing your living relative. So in that context, you will be making a grave error. So typically, very often people are not well studied on other traditions. They have surface information on other traditions. They become, and there's some Akan people like that. We're saying, well, the Akan tradition is the original, and you just need to come and study that, and the other traditions don't match up. You have some people talking like that in the Akan tradition, which is not accurate either. We come from a common root, and then we go to different areas of the continent, different parts of the world, and we adapt the culture based on the manifestation of the divinities in that region of the Earth Mother at that point. So studying any tradition, whether it's Akan, Yoruba, whatever it is, if you're studying the divinities for real, of course you're going to be studying science and medicine and everything else, because these are the forces of nature. But Yoruba is no different, in that regard to the Akan tradition, Igbo tradition, or anything else. any ancestral tradition for real, if you're studying the forces of nature and actually communicating with them, they govern, plant life, animal life, mineral life, Earth Mother, the oceans, rivers, as well as the planets and everything else on every level. So it's nothing unique about Yoruba that's any different than anybody else's. Now, when she said like Hinduism is a perversion, first of all, so that has nothing to do with reality. The Black people who are in India practicing real tradition, they're not practicing Hinduism. Hinduism is total corruption. They're practicing a real tradition with the same divinities that they've been dealing with since, tens of thousands of years when they first got there. Hinduism came into being a couple of thousand years ago, and it came into being as a corruption of fragments of the tradition of the Black Dravidians who were there from the beginning. So when people are using these little Hindu deities and all of that, that's corruption as well. Vodou is not a descendant of the Yoruba tradition. It's on the Ewe people and the Aja people and so forth. They have a tradition based on their interaction with the divinities. So people need to find out what their actual ancestral clan is and embrace that, born of the blood circle tradition that was born in their matriclans and patriclans since we've been here. Now, you can learn things about traditions from our clan people and Yoruba people and Igbo people and other people from the continent, but you only have an authentic tradition based on the tradition that was preserved in your blood circle, because we continue to interface with the forces in nature wherever we have migrated to or we were forced to migrate to. But some people have that they have a Yoruba-centric approach or an Akan-centric approach. We even have people come to us assuming that we have an Akan-centric approach, like, well, I think I want to join the Akan tradition, as though it's some kind of congregation you can just join, which is not. They may like what we have to say, but if they look into their own traditions, they will find the same thing. They're just used to people misinforming about the traditions. So if they like us telling the truth about the culture, they'll say, well, I must be Akan. But the same truth you find when we're talking about Akan tradition is found in all the other traditions when it's authentically approached. But I mean, we have to look into our own blood circle traditions. That's the key. But some people are just not well studied. If she says something like, well, you don't have to study Kamit, that means she doesn't understand what a study of Kamit actually is, because if she did, it would be impossible for her to say that. But since she's either used to people just talking surface about Kamit or she hasn't looked into it herself, then she wouldn't understand that. To herd people into, well, you just need to study Yoruba, that would be absurd telling somebody Akan, well, you just need to study the Yoruba tradition. That would be ridiculous. They don't have the Akradin bosom. They don't have that specific covenant or relationship with specific bosom that sent them into the world on a specific day to align with them based on that 7-day cycle and so forth. If they were to say, I'm just going to study Yoruba tradition, they would be totally off base. That would be ridiculous. And it'd be the same thing if you try to force a Ewe person to embrace the Akan tradition and just study that and leave Vodou alone. That would be absurd. So we have to get back to our own traditions. And, then you'll be able to see where people are, off base. But that does happen a lot, though. So I just wanted to pull this up. Okay, this is taking a minute to pull up. Hold on 1 second. I almost had it. But let me know if that answers the question.
Yes, Madase.
Okay, I said that. Okay, so there's a specific okay, there it is. I just missed it. Okay, so we might have to do it that way. Hold on 1 second. Okay, there it is. Okay, so it's just taking a minute to get up, but okay, so here it is. Let me make sure you can see that. Okay, so if you see here, hepet, you see the two arms here. It means to embrace, to hug, to take the breast, and so forth. You have hepet, ket, one of the 42 assessors of Ausar, which is the one we're talking about. You have hepit, Heru, and so forth, the goddess of resurrection. But it means to embrace, or to hug, or to take the breast, and so forth. And I just wanted to get the, then it has the side posts of a door, part of a ship. So now let's go back to the text. So they spell a little bit different here, because that one is hepet, ket, and here is hepet, sechet. And you see the sechet has a little flame here and so forth, but the embrace here, you see the two arms embracing. But what you also see in the middle of that, but you may not be able to see it as well. Let me blow it up a little bit, or actually it won't allow me to go higher. But it's the same two arms embracing here, but there's a little serpent in between. Let me see if they have a version of that in this one. Okay, and that one, well, you see the two arms here, hugging and embracing. But in the text, there's hugging and embracing. There's a little serpent inside the two arms with the hugging and embracing. So hepet is the goddess of resurrection and so forth, but then embrace the flame, embracing the flame and so forth, embrace with flame, embracing flame. But that's a little serpent divinity coming forth from Ker Abba, not have I despoiled. Now, if we go back up, so we had a olfactory nerve that has to do with the, sense of smell, he of the nose. You have the optic nerve responsible for the sense of vision, oculomotor nerve responsible for eye movements, controlling, lifting the upper eyelid and so forth, eyes pointed up, pupillary constriction. So if you have the one who's embracing, it also said the doorpost and so forth, but embracing the fire. Now you have these two different divinities. One has to do with sight, as with regard to pupillary constriction, but then you have another one dealing with sight, just vision in and of itself. But if you're embracing that sechet or embracing that, fire, or embracing the serpent and so forth, that's that optic nerve that's able to embrace or see or hug or, pull in that serpent energy. that serpent energy or that fiery serpent energy is it's a serpent that's straight up, you know, reared up and so forth. You know, we have the fire spitting cobra, that fire energy, the Wachet, the third energy or third eye energy and so forth, that fiery energy of the eye and all of that. Wachet means the fiery serpent, but Wachet is also the eye. Wachet is the female divinity. You know, Wachet means green, but Wachet is also the female serpent, cobra divinity, fire spitting cobra and so forth, but she's also around the solar disk. Let's show an image of Wachet around the solar disk. Okay, so here you have a serpent that's embracing Hepet, the Seshet, the fire, and it's around the quote unquote, you know, third eye. So that's the serpent, that's the luminous fiery energy, and she's wrapped around it. Wait, let me make sure. Okay, so that's the serpent wrapped around the fiery energy, which is also, you know, illuminate, shining, quote unquote, third eye energy of vision and all of that. And then you have Hepet Sechet. This is a brazier, which is a little, you know, burner with the flame and smoke coming out and so forth. But that's a little flame of fire and smoke coming out. So the one who's embracing a serpent in between the two arms that are embracing a serpent, the serpent embrace of the flame. The serpent that's embracing the flame, that's also in the region of the optic nerve. So you have the first three nerves. You have the olfactory nerve, he of the nose, it's Fantiu. The optic nerve, which is the flame, embracing the flame and so forth. That is the serpent embracing the fiery flame, the fiery brazier right here. And then you have Strider, the Uset, you know, dealing with the constricting of the pupils and so forth. So the olfactory nerve and the optic nerve and the oculomotor nerve are those first three. And then you have the first three divinities, you know, starting from Southern Kamit and going through, you know, moving up towards the north and so forth. But starting from the head region, which is the south, and then you start moving down all the way to the north. So the first 12, you know, divinities are going to be in the cranial nerves, and then the other 31 are going to be to the rest of the body, all the way down to the coccyx, which is northern Kamit. But as you see, that's how we'll go through them throughout the course of the session, seeing who's who, what their function is, their relationship to the different pairs of nerves and so forth. So you have understand their shrine in the body, know that they have a place, a shrine in the body. So every time you invoke these divinities, they're connected to their region of the body. But again, these are spirits that will possess, that will communicate, that will show themselves in dreams. If you're clairvoyant, you see them and so forth. Some of them are titles of divinities that you're already familiar with, like Fantiu, which is the title of Tahuti. This is just one of his titles, he of the great nose and so forth, the olfactory nerve and so forth. So this is what's going on with these different divinities. Okay, so had a couple of statements in the chat room before we end it. Okay, Yaada, we appreciate that. Yes, so when people put, food of offerings out, you do not touch, the food, you end up despoiling the food. That's like, um, that's like touching somebody's, pupil with your finger or something. You're despoiling that. You don't put ritual food out and then somebody goes and grabs it. Only person that could, if you put an offering out like some fruit on the shrine and so forth, only one who could touch it and it wouldn't be despoiled. So if you have a little baby, like a 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, and they're just walking around and they walk over and grab a piece of fruit or whatever, they just came from the ancestral realm. They're still pure like that. They're just doing their thing. So they have that latitude. But, anybody else, you're despoiling the offerings when you try to reach and touch that. You're disrupting the release of energy that they're designed to, put forward. Just by putting that offering on the shrine, is releasing a certain configuration of energy, whether it's a fiery plant or mineral or whatever it is, or a cool watery plant or mineral. It's releasing that kind of energy to provoke the energy of the divinity that's associated with it, so that dispensation can come to you. And if you despoil it, then you disrupt that energetic release. Okay. All right, so it's 9:58, so we're gonna go ahead and end it here. So of course, we're gonna post this. If you have any questions, send us an email. Certain events we did have to reschedule. For some of you who are unaware, we did have our 5th annual Echisign Ancestral Religious Reversion Conference, like we normally do, near the spring equinox and so forth. We had it this past Awusida Sunday, but we had to do it online because of all the restrictions and shutdowns in the cities. We had it online, and we posted that video, myself, as well as Wakili Oyinola. She presented on immunity and the Ori, which in Yoruba and Juju is the same as the Okra and Akan. I did a presentation on Okra, Nesum, the soul and the spirit, Adinkra, and healing. So you can go to YouTube and check that out. We are going to be planning the Ojiramaina Fashe Nation Building Conference and so forth. It'll be our 5th annual. That's around June 20th, that June 20th weekend. We will find out whether or not, venues will be back open and so forth. We'll know that soon. If they are not, we will do that same. We will do the conference. It'll be a more expansive online conference. It'll be probably 4 different presenters and so forth. So we are going to schedule that. It's going to go down. Yeah, so, we're going to do that. So we'll have information regarding that. The couple of events that we had something coming up in Savannah next weekend and Atlanta the following weekend after that. Of course, we had to cancel those. We're going to reschedule those. That was the pedigree of the diviner, the Odumafo Anato piece on the Hoodoo tradition and divination and so forth. But we're going to reschedule those. We have the next major thing that we're, in the midst of doing is a 2-fold piece. Definitely by the fall, the venues will be back open. So we will have our Kanche Conjure Film Festival. We were able to get a venue. We submitted the application, it was received. So we're putting funds towards that. Certain things have been disrupted because of this whole, shutdown and so forth, and everybody's at home. And, of course, a lot of people are not, they're only purchasing things that they consider to be essential. So, everybody who would normally be trying to take a class or, purchase some books or things like that, certain things there are not as essential right now. So things are a little bit slower with that, but we're doing 2 things. We're still planning that event. And of course, we're going to have that. That's November 7th. And we're working to get, filmmakers to start submitting their films and so forth. And we are also working on our 2nd film. And we're going to really push in the month of April to try to do most of the filming in April, between April and May. So we can start the post-production process, in June and so forth. So we're working on that whole piece. So if you would like to support our effort, the Kanche Film Festival as well as our film on Hoodoo. You can go to the Conche Film Festival page, support that effort, because we still have to, raise the entire set of funds to, pay for the venue. They allow you to reserve the space with a small amount, but then you still have to pay the thousands of dollars to reserve that venue. It's a theater, the Black Box Theater here in Washington, D.C., all-day event, a 10-hour event, so that's into the thousands of dollars, but we have to, still pay for that. But we're also working to, finish our film, our second film, and we're going to some different states to do the filming, and this is on the Hoodoo tradition. So if you'd like to support that effort, Yaada, I say we appreciate people who have supported so far, and appreciate those who will support in the near future. So Yaada, I say we thank you for joining in, and Yabeshiabio, we will meet again. Oh, the link for the venue, let me give you the link for the venue. Somebody just asked about that. So this is all the links are here. So when you go to this link, that's the Conche Film Festival site, the crowdfunding effort for that. But when you go to that, you will also see the link to the film festival page itself. We have a totally separate website. We purchased a totally different website for the film festival itself, conchefilms.com, which is separate from ojidofo.com. So, so that link in the chat room, that's the fundraiser site. And even if you go to the Conche Film site, there's a link to the fundraiser crowdfunding effort, but that's the direct link in the chat room right there to the crowdfunding site for the film festival. And it also links you to the film festival website where we talk about Conche and what Conche, meaning conjure, is, and the conjure film genre that we have created with our first film, which won an award for Best Original Documentary at the Kwanzaa Film Festival in New York in January. We have created the conjure film genre, meaning the films dealing with conjure based on our ancestral traditions born in North America, including Juju and Hoodoo, Mwanga, Gullah, Geechee, Grigri, Voodoo, Ngangan, Nganga, the various traditions and so forth. These are the kinds of films. We've created our own genre, and people will know, hey, there's a set of conjure films that have come out. I want to learn something about Juju. I want to learn something about Hoodoo. There'll be feature films, documentaries, dramas, different, expressions. It's wide open with regard to the kinds of films coming from different filmmakers. We plan to showcase about 10 to 12 films that day, shorts as well as full feature documentaries. So, okay. Yes, so right. So yeah, that's the link, that's the site. That's the link in the chat room. And then if you have any, if there's some other links that you didn't see, you can always send us an email on Facebook or our regular email address, Gmail address, kwesiakon@gmail.com, and then we can forward those to you. But that's the link directly to the site. Oh, hold on one second. Made a mistake. Okay, that should have been, okay. That's the right link, but it didn't show up for everybody on the piece. Okay, so in the chat room now. Okay, yeah, so everybody should be able to see that now. It went to the private link at first, but it's public, so yeah. So that's it, okay. Okay, so once again, Yaada, we thank you for joining in, and Yabeshiabio, we will meet again. That's it.